Growing up, I used to believe my family was ordinary, messy, loud, complicated, but held together by love. We weren't the wealthiest people in the neighborhood, but we never went to bed hungry, and birthdays were always celebrated with homemade cakes and paper decorations. From the outside, we probably looked picture perfect. But inside, the balance of affection was never quite even. And the one person who seemed to fall through the cracks of my mother's heart was me. My sister Emma was the golden child. Even when we were little, the favoritism wasn't subtle. Emma would come home with a painting she splattered together in art class, and Mom would proudly hang it on the refrigerator, calling her my little Picasso. Meanwhile, if I came home with an A on my math test, Mom's response was usually, "Well, of course you did. You're good at math." No hug, no sparkle in her eyes. Just an acknowledgement as if my achievements were expected, not celebrated. Holidays were the clearest reminder of where I stood. Emma's Christmas stocking overflowed with expensive perfumes, makeup kits, and jewelry, while mine was stuffed with socks and maybe a paperback book if I was lucky. Birthdays weren't much different. Emma got parties with balloons, friends, and elaborate cakes. Mine were quiet affairs, sometimes forgotten until I reminded Mom a few days before. Dad wasn't really in the picture. He left when we were young, so Mom's opinion meant everything. And it crushed me that in her eyes, I never seemed to measure up. But I wasn't bitter then. Not really. I threw myself into school and work, quietly building a life that didn't depend on her approval. I studied late into the nights, took on part-time jobs, and saved every penny I could. While Emma basked in attention and praise, I worked in silence, convincing myself that maybe one day Mom would finally notice all the effort I put in. There were moments, though, when the imbalance was impossible to ignore. Like when Emma got into trouble for skipping classes in high school, and Mom laughed it off, saying, "She's just young and figuring herself out." But when I once got a B on a test, Mom scolded me for slacking and told me to stop wasting my potential. Or when Emma borrowed my clothes without asking and ruined them, and Mom told me to stop being dramatic. It felt like no matter what Emma did, she was excused, and no matter what I did, it was never enough. I kept telling myself that families aren't perfect, that maybe one child just naturally needs more attention than the other. I told myself to be strong, to accept my role, to believe that deep down Mom loved us equally, even if she never showed it. For years, I swallowed the disappointment. I told myself I didn't need the spotlight, that I could survive without being the favorite. I thought I could live with being the forgotten one. Until everything changed. The moment is burned into my memory like a scar I'll never forget. We were sitting in the living room, the air heavy with the scent of Mom's lavender candles, the same ones she always lit when she wanted to set the mood for something serious. Emma lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that smug little smirk she wore whenever she knew she had the upper hand. I was sitting across from her, completely unaware that in just a few minutes, the fragile illusion of family I'd clung to all my life would shatter. Mom cleared her throat, folding her hands in her lap as though she were about to deliver some sacred sermon. Her voice carried that soft, patronizing tone she often used with me, the one that made me feel more like a stranger than a child. "I've been doing some thinking," she began, "about the future, about how I want to divide things when I'm gone." For a brief second, hope flickered in me. Maybe, just maybe, this was my moment. Maybe Mom was finally going to see me, acknowledge me, give me the validation I'd craved all my life. But then she said it. "I've decided that everything, the house, the savings, what's left of your father's investments, it's all going to Emma." The words landed like a punch to the gut. I froze, waiting for her to laugh, to backtrack, to say she was joking. But she didn't. Emma's phone slipped from her hand and she grinned like she'd just won the lottery. Which essentially she had. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened and my vision blurred. But Mom kept talking, as if she hadn't just ripped the ground out from under me. "You've always been strong, independent," she explained, her eyes flicking to me briefly before returning to Emma, as though I wasn't worth holding her gaze. "Emma, she needs more support. She's not as capable as you. I know you'll be fine on your own. But Emma, well, she'll need the safety net." Emma tilted her chin, basking in the glow of Mom's favoritism, her smug expression confirming every suspicion I'd buried deep inside. She didn't even try to hide her satisfaction. And me? I sat there silent, trying to process the betrayal. Strong and independent. Those were just pretty words for disposable, for unworthy, for forgotten. I wanted to scream to ask her how she could look at me, her child, and decide I deserved nothing. To demand why years of hard work, sacrifice, and loyalty meant so little compared to Emma's irresponsibility. But no words came, just the ache of being erased, the hollow silence of realizing I was invisible in my own family. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the house or the savings. It was about what it symbolized, the final proof that in my mother's eyes, I had never been enough. And as I sat there, watching Emma gloat and Mom nod in approval, a seed of anger sprouted inside me. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. If Mom's announcement felt like a knife, what came after was the twist. Emma wasted no time reveling in her new status as the chosen one. She paraded around the house like a queen who'd just been crowned, dropping little comments designed to sting me in ways only a sister could. "Guess I don't have to worry about rent anymore," she'd say, smirking as she scrolled through online furniture catalogs. "Oh, I should probably start picking out curtains for my house." She emphasized the word every time, my house, as if she were branding it into my skin. One evening, she even turned to me with a mock sympathetic smile. "Don't take it personally. Not everyone is cut out for responsibility. Mom just knows I'll take care of things better than you ever could." The arrogance dripping from her voice made me want to scream, but I bit my tongue until it nearly bled. And Mom? She didn't stop her. In fact, she encouraged it. Every time I tried to question the decision, she shut me down with that same dismissive tone that had haunted me since childhood. "Don't be ungrateful," she'd snap. "You should be proud of your sister. She's going to carry the family legacy. You're strong enough to make it on your own." Strong enough? The phrase echoed in my head like poison. I had spent years proving my strength, my independence, my ability to survive without leaning on anyone. And instead of respect, all it earned me was dismissal. It wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about years of being overlooked, unappreciated, and pushed aside. Every birthday ignored, every achievement brushed off, every sacrifice unseen. They all came rushing back like a tidal wave, crushing me under the weight of it all. For days, I walked around in a haze. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The house that had once been a cage of quiet suffering now felt like a stage where Emma and Mom flaunted their alliance, laughing and planning a future that didn't include me. I had never felt so unwanted, so erased, so utterly alone. I hit rock bottom one night as I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My chest ached with grief, my fists clenched with rage. For a moment, I wondered if maybe they were right, if maybe I really was worth nothing. If maybe being forgotten was all I was destined for, but then something inside me shifted. The grief curdled into resolve, the pain sharpened into clarity. I remembered every hour I'd spent working while Emma played, every sacrifice I'd made while she took, every time I held my head high when no one cared enough to notice. I realized then that my worth was never theirs to give or to take away. And if they thought I was going to fade quietly into the background, they were about to be very, very wrong. I sat up that night, my pulse steady, my mind clearer than it had been in years. If they thought I had nothing, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Once the anger settled into my bones, I stopped lashing out in silence. I stopped crying into my pillow or staring blankly at the walls. Instead, I grew quiet, dangerously quiet. Emma thought my silence was surrender, and Mom seemed relieved to believe I had finally accepted their decision. But what they didn't know was that every moment I spent in that quiet was another step in a plan they would never see coming. The truth was simple. I wasn't as powerless as they thought. Years ago, after Dad left, I'd learned to survive without leaning on anyone. While Emma spent her allowance on designer clothes and weekend trips, I worked 2 jobs, put myself through school, and invested every spare cent. I read about finance when others were sleeping, and I made choices that no one bothered to notice because no one ever asked. At first, I did it out of necessity because I had no one else to rely on. But over time, my savings grew. My small investments turned into something substantial, and little by little, I built a safety net of my own. By the time Mom announced her decision, I wasn't just independent. I was standing on a fortune no one in my family even knew existed, but I didn't want to just tell them. That would have been too easy, too merciful. No, I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had dismissed, to taste the bitter regret of underestimating me. So I started preparing. I gathered documents, investment portfolios, bank statements, property deeds, all tucked away in a folder that looked unassuming on the outside, but carried years of quiet sacrifice inside. I polished every detail, highlighting the truth they had been blind to all along. While they pitied me as the forgotten one, I had outgrown their pity entirely. It wasn't only about the money. It was about rewriting the story. For so long, I'd been painted as the strong, silent one who would simply endure. But strength isn't silence. It's knowing when to finally speak, when to turn years of dismissal into undeniable proof. Each night, I rehearsed the reveal in my head. I pictured the looks on their faces when I laid the truth bare. When I showed them that the child they considered disposable had built a life worth more than the one they so carelessly handed to Emma. I could already see the smug smile vanish from my sister's lips. Could almost hear the sharp intake of breath from Mom when she realized she had chosen wrong. For the first time in years, I felt in control. Not because I was louder, not because I was crueler, but because I had turned my pain into something powerful. And I knew when the time came I wouldn't just be sharing numbers on paper. I would be holding up a mirror to their betrayal. I didn't just have a plan. I had the one thing they never expected. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Mom had invited a few relatives over for dinner, a little celebration of her decision, though she never called it that. But the way Emma beamed as she floated around the table, the way Mom bragged about her future plans for the family legacy, it was clear enough. They expected me to sit in silence like I always had, shrinking into the background while my sister played her starring role, but not this time. As the meal wound down, Mom clinked her glass with a spoon and cleared her throat. I just want everyone here to know that when I'm gone, Emma will be taking over everything. The house, the finances, all of it. She's earned it. The word nearly made me laugh. But instead, I reached down, my hand steady as I pulled out the plain black folder I'd brought with me. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter, there's something you should all see. The room fell silent. Emma's smug grin faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation. What are you doing? She snapped. I didn't answer her. Instead, I laid the documents out on the table one by one, bank statements, investment records, property deeds. The numbers spoke louder than I ever could. Years of quiet sacrifice, late nights, and discipline lined up in neat, undeniable rows of ink. I may not be inheriting anything from Mom, I said calmly, but I built my own future. While Emma was spending and playing, I was working and planning. I don't need anyone's handouts. I've secured more than enough to stand on my own and to surpass everything that's been promised to her. For a moment, no one moved. Mom's fork slipped from her hand, clattering against her plate. Relatives leaned in, whispering among themselves, their eyes darting between the numbers and my mother's pale face. Emma snatched at one of the papers, scanning it with disbelief. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide. This can't be real. It's real, I said, my voice steady, almost cold. Every penny, every property, every investment, all mine, built without a single ounce of support from this family. The silence that followed was delicious. Mom's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. Emma, on the other hand, crumbled. Her bravado shattered as tears welled up, her hands shaking as she dropped the papers back onto the table. Relatives exchanged looks of shock, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction at watching the golden child's crown slip. I could almost hear their thoughts. All this time, it was her, the forgotten one, who had been holding the real power. I leaned back, my heart steady, no longer racing with anger, but beating with a strange, sharp satisfaction. For years, I had been the one holding my breath while they thrived on my silence. But now the roles were reversed. For once, it was me watching them fall apart. And it felt just... The silence after my reveal lingered like a storm cloud. Emma sat frozen, her once arrogant posture crumbling as reality set in. The girl who had laughed, mocked, and flaunted her victory now looked small, almost childlike, as tears streaked down her cheeks. She tried to muster defiance, but the papers on the table glared back at her, stripping her of every ounce of superiority she thought she held. Mom's reaction was harder to watch. Her face was pale, her lips trembling as though she wanted to speak, but couldn't form the words. Finally, she managed a broken whisper. I didn't know. I believed her. She hadn't known, not because I'd hidden it well, but because she had never bothered to look. She had been too busy building Emma up, too busy dismissing me as strong enough. And now that the truth stared her in the face, the weight of her choices finally sank in. She reached for me then, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. I should have, but I pulled back. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. It's too late for apologies, Mom. I didn't need your money. I needed your respect, and you never gave it. Her eyes filled with tears, the kind I had longed to see for years, the kind that showed she finally understood the pain she had caused. But they didn't move me the way she hoped. Because for once, I wasn't the one begging to be seen. As I stood up, relatives murmured among themselves. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others cast sympathetic glances my way. I didn't need their approval either. The validation I had been chasing all my life wasn't in anyone else's hands anymore. It was mine. Emma's sobs echoed as I walked toward the door, and Mom's pleading voice followed. Please don't go like this. We can fix it. We can be a family again. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and turned back one last time. Family isn't built on favoritism and lies. It's built on love and respect, and you only ever gave me one of those. Her tears fell harder, and Emma buried her face in her hands. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of sadness, not for what I was losing, but for what I had never truly had. But as I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I felt something I hadn't in years: freedom. My chest no longer ached with the weight of invisibility. My silence had been broken, my worth undeniable. The revenge had never really been about money. It was about finally being seen, about proving, not to them but to myself, that I was never the weak one, never the forgotten one. I had built a life on my own terms, and now they had no choice but to recognize it. I walked away that night with nothing from them, yet with everything I had ever needed, and as their cries faded behind me, one truth rang louder than ever. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't taking what they tried to deny you. It's showing them you never needed it at all.